Happy October, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So the Halloween season is upon us once again, and that means I am once again doing my annual Halloween ranking series. For those of you who are new to my channel, during the month of October leading up to Halloween, I do a ranking of my favorite movies from a specific decade. I started with the 70s, and we have worked our way up to the 2010s. And I upload one video every day, counting down my 31 favorite movies from that particular decade. So you're going to get a video every day this October as I count down from 31 to number 1 for my favorite horror movies from the 2010s. So yes, we finally made it to the 2010s, everybody. It's been an interesting journey going through all these decades and counting down my favorite movies from those decades. I've had a great time doing this, and I look forward to doing this every year because I like, talking about some of my favorite movies with all of you here, and I enjoy rambling and gushing over all of it. Anyway, this is the first video for the month of October, and usual house cleanup here before we get into the ranking. As many YouTubers say when they are doing a countdown of their favorite movies, this is just my opinion. These movies on this list are just my own favorite movies, and they are my own personal taste. There are so many people out there who choose to get angry when watching a ranking video. Someone's opinion on film and their personal taste in film has absolutely no effect on you, positive or negative. So that's my thoughts on the matter. And this ranking is how I feel at this point, and my tastes are going to change over the years. As I see more movies, some of the movies on this list might get higher on the list, they might get lower on the list, they might get knocked off the list completely and replaced by other films that I watch that I haven't had a chance to see yet. Don't take the ranking too seriously, this is all done for fun. So, on that note, let's talk a little bit about the 2010s. This was a very interesting decade when it comes to film in general. I always like to look at the decades a little bit before we get into the actual ranking. And when it comes to the 2010s, this is... In the 2000s, movies became more widely available because of the internet. You were able to get a hold of more movies. The early 2000s, 2000 to 2009, Japanese films and Asian movies, especially, Asian horror movies and stuff like that, grew in popularity over here in America because with the internet there was more access to a lot of those movies, and you were able to get more of those movies here in America. And then when you get to the 2010s, movies became even more widely available because of streaming services. Now, it all started with Netflix, and Netflix, before they started streaming movies online, they, it was like a mail-in service. You could rent movies through the mail and then return them as you needed to when you were done with them. And then they eventually started streaming online, and as we started getting into the 2010s, you had more streaming services popping up, like Amazon Prime, Disney+. We have so many streaming services nowadays. And that was a bit of a double-edged sword, because it made, speaking specifically for horror fans and horror movies, it made more movies available, and it made it easier to find little gems in the horror genre, but at the same time it also made it harder to find gems in the horror genre. Because when streaming services became a thing, like I said, more movies were available for us to watch, but so many of them were available for us to watch, which, again, it made it slightly easier for you to find little gems in the horror genre, but it also made it more likely for movies to get buried by all the other movies that were put on streaming services. The other problem with streaming services is you fall into choice paralysis. I know I'm not the only one here. I've had many people, mention this again. I mean, I've seen many people talk about it, and I've had many people talk about it to me. I remember when I was dating my girlfriend at the time, we would get together and try to find something on streaming to watch, and we would spend 30 minutes or more trying to find something just because we were going through all the material that was on there, and it made it even harder to choose what to watch. And like I said, I know I'm not the only one who felt that way. I've heard many people talk about that. With the overabundance of content out there, in a way it made it harder to choose what to watch because you would just keep going, looking and looking. You would spend more time searching for something than actually watching it. And the 2010s was also the decade when the phrase elevated horror became a thing. But yeah, the phrase elevated horror really kind of exploded in the 2010s. And at the same time, you had a lot of people who were annoyed by the phrase elevated horror. Yeah, the phrase elevated horror became popularized in the 2010s, but you could easily say that elevated horror existed way before the 2010s. There are so many horror movies throughout the history of the horror genre that could easily be considered elevated horror. Like Eraserhead, Possession, The Shining could definitely be considered elevated horror, and many other movies. So yeah, like elevated horror, quote-unquote elevated horror, has always kind of been a thing. So then you have all these newer movies being dubbed elevated horror. It was a bit annoying at the time. So when picking my 31 favorite horror movies from the 2010s, it was difficult. Every year, it's always difficult to pick your favorite movies, especially when you give yourself a set list. Like, every decade there are so many movies that come out, and focusing on horror, there are so many horror movies that come out, and you only have 31 spots. So there's definitely movies that are not going to make the list. There were a lot of movies that I was kind of sad got knocked off the list. Like, for example, Green Room was originally on the list. It was at number 31. But then I remembered another movie that I loved even more than Green Room that I had completely forgotten about, and I was like, oh god, I have to have this movie on the list. And then when I put it on the list, it of course knocked Green Room out. So consider Green Room number 32 in this spot. And yes, I'm sad to see it get knocked off the list, but I have to be honest here. And making this list, I noticed how schizophrenic this list really was. 2010 to 2019, that was the decade when I really started diving into micro-budget movies and micro-budget horror and lower-budget horror movies and stuff like that. So you're going to see a good amount of low to micro-budget movies on this list. You're going to see stuff that's considered elevated horror. You're going to see stuff that's considered schlocky fun. You're going to see some really low-budget stuff on this list. This list is all over the place. And that's part of the fun of the horror genre, like seeing the varieties that are on different people's lists. But after that introduction, let's get into it. We now begin counting down my 31 favorite horror movies from the 2010s. And at number 31, we have Gerald's Game.
Gerald? What? What's happening? Gerald!
And we're starting off with a movie that was originally released on Netflix, directed by Mike Flanagan. Now, Gerald's Game, it's based on a novel by Stephen King, and I never read the book, but I know what the plot is. The story for Gerald's Game, both the movie and, of course, the novel, is you have this couple, this husband and wife. They go to this cabin, and they're going there to try and spice up their marriage. Their marriage has kind of been on the rocks, so they're going there to kind of try to spice up their sex life here, because the husband has always wanted to deal with this kink of handcuffing his wife to the bed and having sex with her in that position. It's a very uncomfortable scene because he gets a little too into it. So the wife gets handcuffed to the bed. Both her hands are, handcuffed to the headboard thing there. And the husband starts getting a little too into it. And he gets into the rapier side of it, which the wife is uncomfortable with. She was on board with the handcuff part of it, but was uncomfortable with the fact that he was getting so much into that darker side of it. So, in the process of this, as they're arguing back and forth, the husband has a heart attack and dies, leaving her handcuffed to the bed. And that's the movie. Her handcuffed to this bed with no one else around, trying to figure a way out of this situation. Certain things happen throughout the film, but for the majority of the movie, we are in this bedroom with her handcuffed to the bed. It has similarities to the movie Misery, but in Misery there were two characters to deal with. You had Annie Wilkes kidnapping her favorite author and after an accident, and his legs are all broken and he's in the bed because he's injured and he can't get out. In this one, there's really only one person in this bedroom. This woman handcuffed to the bed. And there's an interesting way that they deal with it because she sees like hallucinations of her husband and all these different things that make the story interesting. Now, that concept could easily have gone wrong because of the fact that you are dealing with a person handcuffed to a bed and we're basically stuck in this bedroom for the majority of the movie. If it was not done right, it could have easily been a very boring, uninteresting film. And I've heard many people say, even though I did not read the book, I've heard many people say that the book would probably be impossible to make into a movie. But Mike Flanagan succeeded. He made a very, very interesting movie. And I respect when a movie can take an idea that could easily be boring and make it into a very interesting, very unnerving movie.
Back off! If you don't wake up, you're gonna die.
Isolation, the thought of isolation is always such a frightening concept. I mean, like, talking about misery, I mean, yes, the author is stuck in bed because of his injuries, and it does mostly take place in this bedroom in Misery, but you still had Annie Wilkes in the movie, so there was somebody to bounce off of for the most part. Here, yes, her own, like, there is a way that the movie finds a way to have her interact with someone, but it is, for the most part, just her in this bed. Because she is handcuffed to the bed, so her arms are out like this for the majority of the time, and she's just kind of like hanging there. And just imagining yourself in that situation is just like, you kind of uncomfortably adjust yourself in your seat because you can feel like your arms getting tired because her arms must be getting tired because they're forced to be up there like that. And when you, like, admittedly, yes, she has the handcuffs so she can kind of relax her arms in the handcuffs and not hold them up of her own free will, but then you still have the handcuffs digging into her wrist. You still have blood leaving the arms because they're up like this. I mean, whether you're holding them up or not, having your arms by your side for such a long period of time, it hurts and it can feel so uncomfortable. And especially because of the fact that they can't really move. So she's just kind of like, you know, she can have some movement, but not a lot. So it's just, it makes you feel so uncomfortable while watching this, just because you imagine yourself in that situation. And then you have the main character, Jessica, played by Carla Gugino, forgive me if I mispronounce that name. I mean, she's doing a fantastic job in this movie because she does have to carry the whole film. Because, like, she can bounce off of her imagination, but she, for the most part, is just in that bed dealing with this whole situation herself. And being able to carry a movie while being trapped in a bed is amazing.
You've been pulled till your wrists break. You're not getting out of those cuffs.
You're not real. You're not real.
And even though there are scenes when Carla Gugino is able to bounce off of a figment of her imagination, that's not happening for a lot of this movie. There is a lot of segments of the movie where it's just her in bed, and she has to give a great performance and keep the audience engaged while being trapped in that position. But Gerald's Game, very good movie, very interesting movie, and I always respect when a movie is able to be interesting when being trapped in one location and having the character trapped in a certain position for the majority of the movie. Gerald's Game, such a great Stephen King adaptation. Our first Mike Flanagan movie on this list. You will see him again eventually, and that's all I'll say there. But yeah, Gerald's Game, fantastic movie. Well worth a watch if you have not seen it, and if you're a Stephen King fan, definitely check it out. So yeah, the first movie we're talking about for this countdown this season, Gerald's Game at number 31.